What is up, you guys? I am Missy Renee, and today I'm going to be answering your manifestation questions. So if manifestation and conscious creation are topics that you are interested in learning more about, then definitely do not forget to subscribe to my channel. Also, do not forget to hit that thumbs up button. This tells the YouTube algorithm to help put this video in front of a bigger audience. If you are interested in more of my resources, such as one-on-one coaching, my workshops, or my new Facebook group, I will have links for all of those down in that description box, so do not forget to check it out. So this is going to be part 2, I guess. Part 2? Yeah. Answering some of the questions that I've gotten in my YouTube comments. Now, I have made a part 1 of this video. It has been a while, admittedly, but if you are interested in checking that video out, I'll have the link down in the description box. And I also wanted to make this because I'm going to be doing a weekly Q&A here on my YouTube channel. I haven't nailed down the exact dates and times just yet, but I will let you all know as soon as I do. That I promise. And I've really enjoyed the engagement that I've gotten, and the questions that you guys have sent in have been pretty fantastic. And some of them especially are pretty important ones to note. So it is long overdue to make a part 2. I've curated some of the ones that I felt are really important and really good to know. So without further ado, let's answer some questions. Hey Missy, thank you so much for the content you provide. You are literally changing so many lives for the better, including mine. I do have a question regarding visualization techniques. I, like many of your other viewers, am trying to manifest my SP back into my life. I have been trying different techniques, including revision, SATs, and scripting. In addition to these, sometimes I will visualize my SP in my mind's eye while performing activities throughout my day. For example, I will be cooking something in the kitchen and pretend that my SP is with me in that moment, assisting. Or I will be watching television and visualize in my mind's eye that my SP is there and cuddling with me. This technique allows me to live in the wish fulfilled in that moment, and many times it will make me emotional in a positive way. My question, is this technique akin to daydreaming and reaping the opposite of the intended results? Or am I on the right track here? Thanks in advance. First and foremost, thank you so much for those kind words, Bambi. I love to hear that you are getting so much from my content. That is amazing. But to answer your question, I think that this is an important one because it can be confusing to some, the distinction between daydreaming and SATs, or imagining in the state of the wish fulfilled. Because naturally there are a lot of similarities between the two. And we are all used to daydreaming. Let's just put it that way. We've all done it. We all continue to do it, whether conscious or not. But the key difference between SATs and daydreaming is thinking from your desire versus thinking of your desire. Now, a lot of people get confused about this, so let me try to break it down. When you are thinking of something, you are thinking of it in a sense like it's not here, like it's something that you do not have. It implies that you are separate from the thing that you are daydreaming about. A common example of this, and one that most of us do, is daydreaming in the third person, or daydreaming about something in the future, like something that is going to happen while we are daydreaming. But we don't want to be thinking of our desire. And the whole purpose and point to SATs is that it makes it so we are thinking from our desire. We are thinking from the place of already being there and already having this experience. We're thinking from the scene as if it's something that we are experiencing right now, not something that's going to happen. So when I'm daydreaming, I'm effectively thinking of something far off in the distant future. I am thinking of it as if it's something over there, but is not right now. When I am thinking from somewhere, it implies that I already have it. I am already in that scene, and I'm experiencing this as if it is happening right now. And admittedly, this might take some practice. SATs may take some getting used to because it is very different than what we are used to doing. Daydreaming. We're used to daydreaming. So it might take a few times. It might take playing around with and practicing. But we want to make sure, as Neville used to put it, as we want to make sure that we are making there, here, and then now. So if I'm daydreaming about something, say I am daydreaming about visiting a tropical island, I'm seeing myself in third person, wandering around that beach, and perhaps there is some detail to that daydream. Perhaps I can get some sensory vividness in that daydream. But it feels kind of hazy, and it feels like it's something still very much detached from me. And I'm thinking from the place of something that is going to happen in the future. Whereas if I am in sats and I'm walking down the beach, I am imagining from the first person, myself, actually walking that beach. And in that imaginal act, it's going to feel like I am actually there right now. Not that it's going to happen sometime later. Again, this might take some practice, but before you know it, you will be killing it with sats in no time. So, question. All we need to do is believe it's going to happen in the future. Basically, in the new state, we are just expecting it to happen, correct? We don't have to pretend each day to feel good. That is correct. Now, let me clear some things up, because I know that may sound like a bit of a contradiction to my last answer, and this is what I want to try to get across to the best of my ability. When we are in sats, when we are in our imaginal act, in that imaginal scene, we want to live it to the best of our ability. We want to live in that scene and experience it as if it is happening now. Because the purpose of imagination, you can think of it like a door that will take you anywhere that you want to go. Through imagination, we can go anywhere and do literally anything. So when we are in the imaginal act, we are living that as if it is happening now, not something that is going to happen. Once that has been impressed and you are just going about your day to day, then it is knowing that with that seed planted, that this imaginal act is going to play out in the 3D as a physical experience. And the reason for this is because when it comes to the subconscious mind, our subconscious mind cannot tell the difference between an imaginal act and a memory that really happened in the 3D. If we can get to a point where it feels natural and it feels real in imagination, to the subconscious mind, it's going to feel like this is something that took place in the 3D. Hence why, once it is impressed, once we have subconsciously impressed our desired end, we're going to naturally feel like it's done. We don't have to walk around pretending like our SP is with us. We don't have to walk around and try to force any kind of emotion. No, this should feel natural. This should feel normal. Once subconsciously impressed, it should not be a game of trying to force it. So when you are in imagination, when you are actually in the imaginal act, we want to live it as if we are actually experiencing that in this moment. And then in our day-to-day, as we are going about our lives, it is knowing that once the seed is planted, that that imaginal act must become a physical 3D experience. Question that makes no sense for me with the law of assumption. If the feeling is so important to manifest, how can the ladder exercise work knowing that you don't put any feeling into climbing a ladder? Now, I was admittedly a little bit confused the first time I read this, but what I think you're referring to when we say feeling is emotion. So how can we manifest climbing a ladder if there's no emotion tied to it? Well, the simple answer is that we're not referring to emotion. When we're talking about the feeling, we're not talking about emotion. And this is a super common misconception for obvious reasons. It's not the emotion, but the natural feeling, the naturalness. When we're talking about feeling, we're talking about the senses, the imaginal senses, what we can feel, what we can taste, what we can touch, what we can smell, what we can hear in imagination. So in the case of the ladder experiment, the ladder technique, when we are climbing a ladder in imagination, we are feeling that ladder. We are gripping it. We are climbing it. We are experiencing climbing a ladder in imagination with the same feeling to the best of our ability as if we were climbing that ladder in real life. So no, we're not getting emotional over climbing a ladder, but it is the feeling, the natural feeling with the imaginal senses that creates the subconscious impression and ultimately what makes it manifest. And that goes for anything that we are trying to manifest. It is the natural and normal feeling of it. It should be feeling like this is just an everyday normal thing. Hence why it helps tremendously to invoke the imaginal senses. Because when we invoke the tones of reality, we will find that emotion naturally comes up. We don't have to force it. We don't have to try to make ourselves feel any kind of emotion. Once we invoke all of the tones of reality and make that imaginal scene feel as lifelike as we can, that will naturally and effortlessly be followed by the emotion. But in the case of the ladder, since we are indifferent to a ladder, there will not be an emotion. I understand that the language of the subconscious mind is feeling, and if we want to impress upon it, we have to get into the feeling of the wish desired. But that is, for many people, difficult to either get into or sustain. That can then lead to a feeling of futility if you can't get into or sustain the desired end. On the other hand, there are those that say, forget about trying to feel it. Just say your affirmations on repeat because beliefs are just thoughts you keep thinking. That your subconscious mind is running programs, and that you can change the program by overriding it with the opposite statement. I mean, if you reverse engineer it, that's how we developed any belief. Take, for example, the idea of aging. We have all heard over and over and over again, ad nauseum, to the point of general societal acceptance, that aging is an inevitability. And so as a species, we believe in our powerless over decline. But that's how we came upon any belief. We heard it repetitively, and because faith comes by hearing, we eventually believed it. So some YouTube coaches say you don't have to feel your affirmations, that you don't even have to believe them, but that if faith comes by hearing, you will grow to believe them if you persist. But then I hear other people say, and rightfully so, not to believe in the power of vain repetitions. I guess what I'm saying is that, for me, it can be challenging to maintain the feeling of my wish when I can clearly see its opposite in the 3D. But I can force myself to say, albeit often sometimes through tears, my affirmation. But God knows I don't believe it in that moment. Can you shed some light on this? I don't think the people who say just repeat your affirmations are saying that you don't have to feel your wish fulfilled. I just think they're saying that saying the affirmation over time, with repetition and with persistence, will eventually lead to the feeling or the belief that it is true. That's when the subconscious mind will grab hold of it. I mean, isn't that classic brainwashing? Aren't we, in essence, brainwashing ourselves? And this is a fantastic question for so many reasons. I love this because, yes, it is one that there is much debate in the manifestation community. Some people say that through affirmations and through repetition, you will grow to believe, even if you don't believe in that moment. While others will say to not just repeat vain affirmations, because it is ultimately the feeling that we're after. And that if we try to force the subconscious mind to change, we're going to create some kickback and some pushback. And I myself personally fall more into the latter camp, in that the vain repetitions are likely going to cause a lot more pushback than benefit. Now, I want to be clear that affirmations can be an incredibly powerful tool. And if we use them in the right way, without force and without trying to directly and forcefully go against the grain, they can be very, very powerful indeed. But the issue that I take with this is that we're directly trying to go against the law of reversed effort. And the law of reversed effort, for those who may not know, states that when the imagination and willpower are in conflict, the imagination is inevitably going to win every time. That is to say, our subconscious mind is infinitely more powerful than our conscious mind. In fact, 90% of the day, we're operating subconsciously. And the reason that I have a hard time advising this and giving vain repetition as an advice is because of this law of reversed effort. If you are trying to tell yourself something over and over again that goes directly against the beliefs that you currently carry, the assumptions that you currently have, it's going to feel like you're lying to yourself. It's going to feel very forced, and it's going to feel very unnatural. And those are all things that we want to avoid when it comes to conscious creation, because when it comes to manifestation in general, it is a very effortless process. We're doing it all the time. We're just usually not conscious when we are doing so. And to touch on the example that you gave when it comes to aging, it's important to note that the reason we have these beliefs and they're so strongly embedded in us is because these were things that were taught to us when we were kids, when we were very little. And it is in that time, it is in the first 7 years, especially when we are developing, that we are forming and growing these beliefs, these assumptions, and this concept of self. In that time, we're like sponges, and whatever we are told, whatever we are taught, whatever we witness, whatever we experience, the subconscious is going to take it and program it as true. So the difficulty becomes, as adults, we already have these programs set. We already have this concept of self, our beliefs, our assumptions about us, about other people, and about the world in general. And that feeling of resistance stems from a desire that we have, that wish fulfilled, and one of the beliefs or assumptions that we carry. Because again, when the imagination or subconscious and willpower or the conscious are in conflict with each other, it is the imagination or the subconscious mind that is going to win that fight every time. Now, is that to say that it is impossible to manifest through the repetition of our affirmations alone? I'd argue no. I'd say that you could technically manifest through affirmations alone, because ultimately you can do anything. I would just argue that that's not the most effortless way to go about this. And though it may feel challenging initially to feel and sustain that wish fulfilled, this is why we turn to imagination. Because it is through the imagination that we can do anything. We can go anywhere. We can be and do and have whatever we want. There are no limitations to what we can imagine. And as I said earlier, the subconscious mind cannot tell the difference between an imaginal act, like the one we do in SATs, and something that happens in the 3D, or a memory of something that really happened. So through the imagination, we are able to impress the subconscious, and doing so in a way that is not forced, and it doesn't feel like we're lying to ourselves. Granted, I know that SATs can take some practice getting used to, because again, we're not used to using our imagination in this way. This is something completely new to us. And just like anything that is new to us, it will take some practice getting acclimated to it. But the more that you do it, it's going to begin to feel like second nature, without the force, without the lying to yourself, without any of that. This is how we obtain the feeling of naturalness. Can you please define the difference between states and self-concept? No matter what state you visualize, doesn't self-conception need to change after all? If I understood correctly, what is the relationship between them? And this is a fantastic question, and I'm actually considering making a video just covering this topic specifically. Especially in recent weeks, I've had a few people ask me about self-concept, and I've certainly had this question asked many times. What is the difference? What is the relation between states and concept of self? And though they do go hand in hand, they're not technically the same thing. A state is an attitude of mind, a state of experience based on a body of beliefs. The state constitutes your dwelling place and the circumstances that you will experience in the 3D. An easy way to think of states is thinking of them like parallel realities, because all of creation is finished. All states or realities already exist, and they all exist now as possibilities. You can change states morning, noon, and night, but the state to which you most constantly return constitutes your dwelling place. It is from there you are going to live and perpetuate until you move in thought. Your conception of self, or your self-concept, is the sum total of your beliefs and assumptions about yourself, about other people, and about the world around you. To attempt to change the world before we change our concept of ourselves is to struggle against the nature of things. There can be no outer change until there is first an inner change. As within, so without. So an easy way to think about states are different realities, parallel realities, that contain events, people, circumstances, locations, all of the above. And all states already exist right now in imagination, or to us, exist hypothetically. And it is your self-concept that ultimately determines the state or the dwelling place. It is the concept of self that determines the state you experience or the state that you move into, or which hypothetical reality becomes your experience. And we are always moving in and out of different states all the time. But each of us have a dominant state, or a state that we will naturally return to based on the dominant beliefs and assumptions that we carry. So in order to change your state or your dwelling place, your circumstances, or the people in it, we must first change our self-concept or the inner beliefs. So a state is a potential objective reality that becomes an external experience based on the beliefs and assumptions. Your self-concept is the sum total of your innermost convictions. It is the internal experience based on your belief and assumptions. As within, so without. And the reason that this is such an important question is because to note the distinction between the two is everything. Because as I've mentioned just a minute ago, we're always moving in and out of states, but we all have a dominant state that we will return to because we are creatures of habit. And that dominant state may not be one that you desire. It may not be one that you like. It might be one that you hate. But because it feels normal and natural and familiar, we wind up reverting back to that state regardless. Because there's also a growing number of people that are saying that self-concept is not important or not needed to manifest. And I will say that while that is technically true, because we can move into a desired state without fully changing the concept of self that we carry, but in order to maintain that desired state, we must first change the body of beliefs, aka our concept of self. So can you manifest without changing your self-concept? Technically speaking, yes. But because the dominant state will not change, unless there is a change in the concept of self, you may move to that desired state, but ultimately will not be able to maintain it without first changing the inner beliefs and convictions. And this is why it is so important to remember that there is no one to change but self. We don't need to change the outside. We don't need to change other people. We don't need to change the external circumstances, because ultimately, the only thing that will create the change that we desire to see is a change from within. As within, so without. So it is the state that contains the manifestation in its 3D form, but it is the self-concept that ultimately determines if it will be maintained. I definitely know this from personal experience. So yes, while states and self-concept do very much go hand in hand, they are not technically the same thing, but instead determines one or the other. Your state of consciousness, or the reality that you experience, is based on the concept of self that you carry, the sum total of the beliefs that you carry about yourself, about others, and about the world around you. As within, so without. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's Q&A. If you did, do not forget to give it a thumbs up. And if you are interested in checking out any of my other resources, I will have links down below to sign up for one-on-one coaching, my workshops, my blog, podcast, all of that good stuff. My social channels, I will leave it down in the description below, so definitely do not forget to check it out. And if you have any questions that you would like answered in a future Q&A video, drop them down in those comments. Also, do not forget to check out these videos over here. Each video is a different topic, but they all talk about how to manifest the best life possible. So until we meet next time, you guys, take care, be well, and never forget how powerful you truly are. Happy manifesting, guys.